For the first time, we've been able to demonstrate life-sustaining renal function in a human. This is a 52-year-old gentleman who had a known history of chronic kidney disease stage 2, as well as hypertension. But around the events that led to his ultimate brain death, he suffered an acute kidney injury. And so his serum creatinine peaked at 13.8, and he ultimately actually had to be started on dialysis. And this presented a really unique opportunity for us to not only sort of test these xenografts, but to actually do this in an individual that really reflects the kind of individual that we ultimately are hoping to transplant one day. And so we stopped his dialysis and removed his native kidneys. And then we actually transplanted the xenografts, and these xenografts are kidneys from a pig that has been genetically modified to make it more human-like so that the human body doesn't reject it. And we implanted these kidneys just like we would in a living person inside the abdomen, and we hooked the little tube that carries the urine from the kidney, we hooked it up to the bladder just like you would in a living person. And so I think it really allowed us to demonstrate what this would look like in the living, but allowed us to do this in a preclinical human model and demonstrate, as I said, for the first time, life-sustaining renal function. And I use the term life-sustaining, understanding that this preclinical human model is a model of brain death, meaning this individual is in fact deceased, but their heart and lungs are still pumping blood and oxygenating blood. And so it allows us to test the viability of this transplant. And we know that a human being without kidneys and in the absence of dialysis could not be sustained for 7 days. They would ultimately succumb to that by not being able to clear various toxins from their body. And these xenografts not only made urine, but they cleared these toxins and maintained normal renal function and really stability in this model for a full 7 days. And in fact, at study completion, the kidneys were still working. The serum creatinine was 0.9, and they were still making about 275 cc's per hour of urine. I think each of these studies has taught us a lot. And in this case, we were extremely fortunate in that the decedent was very stable, and so that allowed us to follow this out for a longer period of time. And in the context of this stability, have the kidneys go into an environment that was conducive to them not having any delayed function. And we were able to, in fact, to demonstrate urine output within 4 minutes of the kidneys being reperfused. And in fact, in the first 24 hours, these kidneys made over 37 liters of urine. It was really a remarkable thing to see. In each instance, we've really tested sort of our operations, if you will, because it's really important to us to be able to work out all the kinks before we might move this into a living person. We're very hopeful that these data will provide further evidence that xenotransplantation is not only a viable but an immediate solution to the organ shortage crisis that really causes thousands of preventable deaths each year because the gap between supply and demand is that vast. You know, I think our donor families are just extraordinary individuals. It shouldn't be lost on anyone that at the most difficult moment in their lives, where they have lost someone that is near and dear to them, they're having to make a decision about what that person's legacy looks like after their death. And in each of these instances, these families have made the brave decision to allow their loved one to be considered both as a donor for the purposes of both transplantation and research. And when transplant wasn't an option, to have the courage to stay in there, to say, we want our loved one to have this lasting legacy, to move things forward for countless others, they all made the decision and said yes. I'm quite frankly humbled by it. It's extraordinary. I think they are incredibly unique in that regard. But without question, their loved ones' legacies are sealed. I mean, it is very clear to me that this work is going to be pivotal and is going to be what gets us across that finish line to move this into living. And what these families had the courage to do in their most desperate of moments, in their lowest moment, I think is going to bring so much hope and joy to the countless people who just each day are wondering, am I going to get a transplant and live, or am I just not going to wake up?